let's talk some more about this predetermined overhead rate. The predetermined overhead rate is how we apply out manufacturing overhead to our work in process. This is something that's calculated at the beginning of the period. So for your fiscal year, you would calculate this rate at the beginning of the year. This is based on estimated data, not actual data. You're doing this beforehand. So you don't know what your actual data is going to be, and you can't wait until you're finished, because you have to be able to use this rate and apply it as you finish jobs all throughout the period. So you can't wait until after the fact. So that's why we need to go ahead and do it up front. And we're going to have to use our best guess. We need to use our estimated data. So don't use actual figures when you're trying to get the rate. We want to look at our estimated data, because we don't actually have actual figures at the time when we make up our rate. So we've given you some data here. Estimated annual overhead costs and our estimated direct labor costs. Now I could give you this with actual figures as well. You should be able to pick out. I just need to focus on the estimated if what I'm asking for is to calculate the rate. So the predetermined rate's pretty simple. I'm going to take the amount that I think I'm going to spend in total. So for us, that's our $688,000. We're going to divide that by an activity base. Our company uses direct labor cost. So we're going to divide that by that $860,000, again, that we're estimating we're going to have. I don't know that, but we're using an estimate. So do the math here, and this is going to give me an 80%. That means that I'm going to take 80% of my direct labor costs and apply that out as factory overhead. Now, there's another way that we could do this as well. If we flip over, I've given you some different data. Same annual estimated overhead. But now instead of using labor cost, I'm using machine hours. Or you could use direct labor hours. So you don't always have to use the cost side. But still, we're going to take our total of $688,000 and divide it by our activity base, which is 172,000 hours. Now, so what this gives me is a dollar figure. This comes out to $4, again, per machine hour. That's the basis that we would use to allocate out our overhead. So let's go back to our 80%. That was our first data we calculated. So let's say that our actual direct labor cost was $835,000. And I need to apply overhead based on that. Well, my rate is 80%, so if I take 80% of that total labor cost, I'm going to apply $668,000 in manufacturing overhead. That represents manufacturing overhead applied. In our other example, we can do the same thing. Here, let's say our actual machine hours we had were 184,000 hours. We're going to apply that at a rate of $4 an hour. So that's going to give me a total of $736,000 that I will apply in manufacturing overhead. That's the amount we would credit to the manufacturing overhead account and debit into work in process to show the application of overhead into work in process for that particular job or jobs. Now we can also talk about what happens at the end of the period. Again, we're using estimated data to come up with a rate, but we're also basing that on actual figures, actual machine hours, actual direct labor hours, or actual direct labor cost, for instance. Well, unless we had a really great estimate, probably always going to have at least a slight difference. Also, we have those actual manufacturing costs, and we're estimating what those will be. We don't know. They may be more, they may be less. We may be right on the mark, but probably there's going to be a little bit of a difference. So let's just assume a couple of things. Let me draw just we'll put manufacturing overhead, we'll shortcut it. Just put this little T account up. Let's assume that we had incurred actual manufacturing costs of $610,000 this year. Now, remember, actual costs are things like direct materials, not direct materials, the indirect part of materials, any indirect labor, utility charges, insurance, depreciation, supervisor salaries, all these things would be part of manufacturing overhead that are actual charges. So let's say we had $610,000. We debit manufacturing overhead for actual manufacturing overhead. We credit it or decrease it for the applied part. We're applying it, so we're taking it out of there and putting it into work in process. Let's say that we applied $627,000 worth of manufacturing overhead. Well, that leaves me with what? Should get a $17,000 credit balance. Well, what does that mean for us? Well, it means that we were off of our estimate by a little bit, not too badly, but our actual, the 610, was less than the applied, the 627. So did we under or over apply? 610 is actual, 627 is applied. Looks like we applied more than the actual expenses. So we over applied here. This is an over application. Let's do the same thing. Draw another little T account here. Still we had 610 in actual overhead. So we debit that account. But this time let's say that we had 605,000 that we applied and debited into work in process. Well, now I have a $5,000 debit balance. Actual was 610, applied was 605. This time we under applied. Again, neither is bad, it's just that you're comparing estimated data with actual. So you're assuming you're going to have a difference. When you do have a difference with this, at the end of the year, we want to clear this out, and the account that we clear it to is cost of goods sold. So if we had this $5,000 under applied balance, we would credit that account, or the manufacturing overhead account, and we debit cost of goods sold. For the first example, we had over applied, so we had a credit balance. We need to debit it to close it out, and we credit cost of goods sold. Another way you can think about this, if you do have a credit balance in manufacturing overhead at the end of the period, you've over applied. And if you have a debit balance, you've under applied. But again, just go through the rationale of what were my actual charges, what were my applied charges, well, did I over or under apply?